Let us journey back to the height of the Roman Empire, a time of unprecedented power and grandeur, a time of emperors, warriors, and wise thinkers. At its zenith, the Roman Empire stretched from the misty islands of Britannia in the north to the golden deserts of Africa in the south, and from the rugged shores of Hispania in the west to the fertile valleys of Mesopotamia in the east. This was an empire where diverse cultures, languages, and traditions blended together under the shadow of the Roman eagle dot. It was a time of splendor and abundance, of innovation and conquest, and of cultural and intellectual flowering that left an indelible mark on the tapestry of human civilization. Picture the city of Rome in this era, the heart of the empire, pulsating with life and activity. The city's magnificence reflected in its towering monuments, expansive public spaces, and lavish residences, was a testament to the empire's might and prosperity. Rome was a bustling metropolis, a city of contrasts where magnificent temples and luxurious palaces stood alongside crowded apartment buildings and bustling marketplaces. The city's streets were alive with the sounds of vendors hawking their goods, children playing, and the constant hum of human activity. At the same time, the city was also a place of quiet reflection, with serene gardens and tranquil public baths offering respite from the urban bustle. The people of Rome were as diverse as the city itself. There were the patricians, the wealthy aristocrats who held the highest offices and wielded immense political power. They lived in grand residences adorned with elaborate mosaics and frescoes, surrounded by lush gardens and attended by numerous servants. Their days were filled with political maneuvering, public duties, and elaborate feasts and entertainments. Beneath the patricians were the plebeians, the common people of Rome. They were the backbone of the city, working as farmers, traders, craftsmen, and laborers. Despite their lower status, the plebeians had their own political institutions and were vital to the functioning of the empire. Consider Marcus Flavius, a wealthy patrician who owned vast estates outside the city. Each morning, he would rise in his magnificent villa, the walls adorned with scenes of mythological heroes and pastoral landscapes painted in vibrant blues and golds. His atrium, the central courtyard of his home, featured a shallow pool that collected rainwater, its surface reflecting the changing colors of the sky above. Marble columns supported the roof, and the gentle sound of water trickling from ornate fountains created a peaceful atmosphere. Meanwhile, in the bustling heart of the city, Gaius Antonius, a plebeian craftsman, would begin his day in a much different setting. His family lived in a modest apartment on the second floor of an insula, a multi-story building that housed dozens of families. The morning light filtered through small windows as the sounds of the awakening city drifted up from the streets below. The clatter of wooden wheels on stone, the calls of bread vendors, and the distant ring of hammers from the blacksmith shops dot daily. Rhythms of Roman life in the Roman Empire was not just about politics and power, but was also rich in cultural and intellectual pursuits. The Romans were great admirers of Greek culture and learning, and many of the empire's greatest thinkers and artists were heavily influenced by Greek ideas. Philosophy, literature, and the arts flourished under the patronage of the emperors and the wealthy elite. The works of poets like Publius Vergilius Maro and Marcus Ovidius Naso, and philosophers like Lucius Annaeus Seneca and Marcus Aurelius Antoninus continue to be read and admired to this day. These learned men would gather in the porticos and gardens of Rome, their voices carrying across marble courtyards as they debated the nature of virtue, the meaning of happiness, and the responsibilities of citizenship. Yet life in the Roman Empire was also marked by struggle and hardship. The empire's vast size and cultural diversity made it a challenge to govern. There were frequent uprisings and rebellions, especially in the more distant provinces. Slavery was widespread, and the lot of the enslaved was often harsh and brutal. The gap between the rich and the poor was vast, and social mobility was limited. Despite these challenges, the Roman Empire managed to maintain its cohesion and stability for several centuries, a testament to its administrative efficiency and military might. But life in the Roman Empire was not just about survival and struggle. It was also about enjoyment and celebration, entertainment, and spectacle. The Romans were known for their love of games and spectacles. The Colosseum, the largest amphitheater in the empire, was the venue for thrilling contests between trained fighters and wild beast hunts. The Circus Maximus, a massive stadium, hosted exciting chariot races that attracted tens of thousands of spectators. These spectacles, often sponsored by the emperors and wealthy citizens, were not just forms of entertainment, but also important tools for maintaining social order and promoting Roman values. Imagine attending a chariot race at the Circus Maximus on a warm spring afternoon. The massive stadium could hold more than 250,000 spectators, making it larger than any modern sporting venue. The track stretched for more than 600 meters in a great oval, with a central barrier decorated with statues of gods and emperors. The thunderous sound of hooves and wheels, the crack of whips, and the roar of the crowd created an atmosphere of incredible excitement. The charioteers, skilled athletes who risked their lives for glory and gold, became household names throughout the empire. Lucius Valerius Maximus, a champion of the Blue faction, was known for his daring turns around the dangerous curves at each end of the track. Spectators would cheer wildly for their favorite colors: blue, green, red, or white, and enormous sums of money changed hands on wagers placed on the races. Religion and daily worship. Religion was another integral part of life in the Roman Empire. The Romans practiced a polytheistic religion, worshipping a pantheon of gods and goddesses. They believed in the divine origin of their city and their empire, and performed elaborate rituals and sacrifices to ensure the favor of the gods. Over time, the Roman religion absorbed elements from the various cultures under its rule, leading to a rich and diverse religious landscape. In every Roman home, no matter how humble, there stood a small shrine called a lararium. Here, the family would honor their household gods, the Lares, who protected the home, and the Penates, who watched over the family's food and possessions. Each morning, the head of the household would place offerings of bread, wine, or flowers before these modest statues, asking for their protection and blessing for the day ahead. Julia Claudia, the wife of Marcus Flavius, would perform these rituals with quiet dignity. Her children gathered around her as she whispered prayers in the soft morning light. The smoke from burning incense would curl upward, carrying their hopes and gratitude to the divine realm. The architecture of daily life. As we delve deeper into the remarkable fabric of the Roman Empire at its zenith, let us journey through the vibrant streets of Rome, the bustling heart of the empire. Imagine the sight of grand edifices and public structures like the Colosseum and the Pantheon that punctuated the city's skyline. These architectural marvels were a testament to Rome's unparalleled engineering prowess, and they continue to captivate us in the present day. The most common dwelling in Rome was the insula, or apartment building. These structures were often built economically and could be prone to fires and collapses. However, this was the everyday reality for most Romans, as only the wealthy could afford private homes. These domus were luxurious private residences with rooms arranged around a central courtyard, often adorned with intricate mosaics and frescoes. The domus of a wealthy family like that of Senator Titus Flavius Domitianus was a marvel of domestic architecture. Visitors would enter through a grand vestibulum, where a doorkeeper would announce their arrival. The atrium beyond was spacious and airy, its opening to the sky allowing natural light to flood the space. Around this central area were arranged the various rooms of the house, bedrooms called cubicula, a dining room known as the triclinium, a study or tablinum where the master conducted his business, and private quarters for the family. The walls were decorated with frescoes depicting scenes from mythology, distant landscapes, or trompe-l'oeil architectural elements that made the rooms appear larger and more elaborate than they actually were. The floors were covered with mosaics made from thousands of tiny colored tiles, creating intricate patterns or narrative scenes. In one room, a mosaic might show Poseidon rising from the waves, while in another, it might depict the four seasons as beautiful maidens surrounded by appropriate flowers and fruits. The Roman family structure in Roman society. The family was perceived as a fundamental unit. The paterfamilias, or father of the family, held almost absolute power known as patria potestas over his household. This power extended over his wife, children, and slaves, binding them into a single economic and legal entity. However, contrary to many preconceived notions, Roman women enjoyed a significant degree of freedom compared to their contemporaries in other ancient societies. They could own and inherit property, engage in business, and had the right to divorce. Women like Livia Drusilla, wife of Emperor Augustus, wielded considerable influence behind the scenes, advising on political matters and managing vast fortunes. Consider the daily life of Antonia Minor, a noblewoman of the early imperial period. Her morning would begin with the careful attention of her slave women, who would help her dress and arrange her hair in the elaborate styles fashionable at court. Roman women's hairstyles were works of art in themselves, with complex arrangements of curls, braids, and ornaments that could take hours to perfect. After breaking her fast with bread dipped in wine and honey, Antonia might spend her morning overseeing her household, checking the accounts with her steward, or receiving visitors in the formal reception rooms of her domus. The afternoon might be spent at the baths, where she could socialize with other women of her class, or in her private gardens, where she might read poetry or correspond with friends and relatives throughout the empire. Slavery and social structure. Slavery was an integral part of the Roman economy and society. Slaves performed an array of tasks, from domestic chores and tutoring to manual labor in the fields and mines. However, the life of a slave was far from uniform. Their treatment largely depended on their masters. Some slaves were treated relatively well, while others were subjected to severe hardships. Take the example of Stephanus, a Greek slave who served in the household of Marcus Flavius. Educated and intelligent, Stephanus had been captured during a campaign in the eastern provinces. In his master's house, he served as a tutor to the children, teaching them Greek literature and philosophy. While his legal status was that of property, his knowledge and skills earned him a measure of respect and relatively comfortable living conditions. His daily routine would begin before dawn, as he prepared lessons for his young charges. He would lead them through recitations of Homer's epics, explaining the complex relationships between gods and mortals, heroes and villains. In the afternoon, he might accompany them to the baths or to visit other noble families, always remaining a step behind, ready to provide guidance or assistance. Despite his valued position, Stephanus never forgot his desire for freedom. He carefully saved the small gifts of money his master occasionally gave him, hoping one day to purchase his manumission. Many slaves who gained their freedom went on to become successful merchants or craftsmen, and some even achieved positions of influence in Roman society. Engineering marvels. The Romans were renowned for their advancements in engineering and public health. They built an intricate network of roads and bridges to expedite trade and military movement. Their aqueducts ingeniously transported fresh water from distant sources into cities and towns, facilitating public baths and latrines and upholding a high standard of sanitation. The Aqua Claudia, one of Rome's most impressive aqueducts, stretched for nearly 45 miles from mountain springs to the heart of the city. Much of its length ran underground through carefully engineered tunnels, But where it crossed valleys, it soared on magnificent stone arches that seemed to defy gravity. The water flowed gently downhill, following a precisely calculated gradient that maintained a steady flow without erosion or stagnation. At the terminus of each aqueduct was a castellum, a distribution point where the water was divided and directed to various parts of the city. Some flowed to public fountains, where citizens could collect water for their daily needs. Some supplied the great public baths, where hundreds of Romans could bathe in heated pools. And some reached the private homes of the wealthy, a luxury that few could afford, but many envied. Marcus Vitruvius Pollio, the great architect and engineer, wrote extensively about these marvels of Roman engineering. His treatises, studied by builders throughout the empire, explained the principles of construction that allowed Roman engineers to span great distances with their bridges and support enormous weights with their arches and domes. Culinary delights and daily meals. The Roman diet was simple but nourishing, with wheat and barley serving as staples. They enjoyed a variety of fruits, vegetables, and legumes. The wealthier Romans could afford meat, fish, and exotic spices. The Romans were also known for their love of wine, which was consumed at all meals and social occasions. A typical day's meals for a Roman family would begin with the antaculum, a light breakfast of bread with honey, cheese, or olives. This was often eaten standing or while walking, as Romans considered it improper to spend too much time on the morning meal. The main meal of the day was the cena, taken in the late afternoon or early evening. For a wealthy family like that of Senator Gaius Julius Agricola, this might be an elaborate affair lasting several hours. Guests would recline on couches arranged around low tables, following the Greek custom that the Romans had adopted. The meal would begin with gustatio, appetizers such as eggs, olives, or mulsum, a honeyed wine. This was followed by the prima mensa, the main course, which might include several dishes of meat, fish, and vegetables. The meal concluded with the secunda mensa, desserts of fruits, nuts, and sweet pastries. For the common people, the cena was much simpler. A plebeian family might share a meal of pulse, a porridge made from grain, perhaps flavored with vegetables, or a small amount of meat when they could afford it. They would eat sitting on stools around a simple wooden table, their meal illuminated by oil lamps that cast dancing shadows on the walls of their modest home. Education and learning education was highly valued in Roman society. Wealthy Romans often hired private tutors for their children, while the less affluent sent their children to public schools. The curriculum was rigorous, focusing on reading, writing, arithmetic, and moral conduct. Young Quintus Horatius Maximus, son of a wealthy merchant, would begin his education at age 7 with a literator, who taught him the basics of reading and writing. He learned to form letters on wax tablets with a stylus, practicing the same passages over and over until his handwriting was neat and legible. As he grew older, he progressed to studying with a grammaticus, who introduced him to the great works of literature, the Aeneid of Virgil, the Metamorphoses of Ovid, and the histories of Livy and Tacitus. The final stage of education for wealthy young men was rhetoric, the art of public speaking. Under the guidance of a skilled teacher, Quintus learned to construct persuasive arguments, to speak with confidence and eloquence, and to think quickly on his feet. These skills were essential for anyone who hoped to pursue a career in politics or law. Meanwhile, the daughter of the household, Claudia Maxima, received a different but no less valued education. She learned to read and write, to manage household accounts, and to supervise slaves and servants. She studied music and poetry, learning to play the cithara and to sing the traditional songs that were passed down through generations of Roman women. Religious life and festivals. Religion permeated every aspect of Roman life. The Romans worshipped a pantheon of gods and goddesses, each governing a different aspect of life. They believed in the importance of maintaining a proper relationship with the gods through rituals and sacrifices, a practice known as pietas. The religious calendar was filled with festivals and ceremonies throughout the year. During the Saturnalian December, masters and slaves would temporarily reverse roles, creating a carnival-like atmosphere of revelry and role reversal. The Lupercalia in February involved purification rituals and fertility rites. The Floralia in spring celebrated the goddess Flora with flower-crowned processions and theatrical performances. Gaius Pontifex Maximus, the high priest of Rome, would oversee many of these ceremonies. On the steps of the great temples, he would offer sacrifices to the gods, reading omens in the flight of birds or the examination of sacrificial animals' entrails. The smoke from burning offerings would rise into the sky, carrying the prayers and hopes of the Roman people to their divine protectors in private homes. The family would gather each morning around their orarium, the household shrine. The father would sprinkle wine and scatter crumbs of bread before the small statues of the household gods, asking for their protection and blessing. Children would watch solemnly, learning the rituals they would one day pass on to their own families. Urban planning and infrastructure. At the heart of every Roman city was the Forum, a public square that served as the central hub for political, economic, and social activities. The Forum was typically surrounded by important government buildings, temples, and markets. It was here that citizens gathered to discuss politics, engage in trade, or simply socialize. Larger cities like Rome had multiple forums, each with its unique identity and purpose. The Forum Romanum, the oldest and most important of Rome's public spaces, was a marvel of urban planning. Surrounded by towering basilicas, temples, and government buildings, it was the beating heart of the empire. Here, senators would debate matters of state in the Curia. Merchants would conduct business under the porticos, and citizens would gather to hear public announcements or witness important ceremonies. A city's grandeur was often epitomized by its monumental structures. The most famous of these is perhaps the Colosseum in Rome, an engineering marvel that could accommodate up to 50,000 spectators. It was used for public spectacles such as gladiatorial contests, mock sea battles, animal hunts, and public executions. But smaller towns and cities throughout the empire had their own amphitheaters, albeit on a more modest scale. The amphitheater in Pompeii, though much smaller than the Colosseum, was no less impressive to its local population. Built into a natural depression in the ground, it could hold about 20,000 spectators, nearly the entire population of the city. On days when games were held, the entire community would gather to watch the spectacles. From the wealthiest patron in his reserved box to the humblest citizen in the upper tiers. The Roman bathhouse. Experience a quintessential feature of Roman urban planning was the public bathhouse. Not merely places for hygiene, these were social centers where Romans from all walks of life could gather to relax, exercise, and conduct business. The grand bathhouses, like the baths of Caracalla in Rome, boasted an array of facilities including hot and cold baths, saunas, gymnasiums, and even libraries. Picture yourself as Lucius Caecilius Secundus, a prosperous merchant, arriving at the baths on a warm afternoon. After paying the small entrance fee, you would enter the appartatorium, the changing room, where slaves would help you remove your toga and store your belongings in wooden niches along the walls. Your bathing experience would begin in the tepidarium, a warm room that would help your body adjust to the heat. The floors and walls were heated by a hypocaust system. Hot air from underground furnaces circulated through spaces beneath the floors and inside the walls, warming the rooms to comfortable temperatures. You might spend some time here chatting with friends or conducting business in the relaxed atmosphere. Next, you would proceed to the caldarium, the hot room where you would work up a sweat in the steamy heat. Roman bathers did not use soap as we know it, but instead covered themselves with olive oil and then scraped it off with a curved metal tool called a strigil, removing dirt and dead skin in the process. After thoroughly cleansing and sweating in the hot rooms, you would plunge into the frigidarium, the cold bath. This sudden change in temperature was believed to be beneficial for health, toning the body and invigorating the spirit. The cold water would close your pores and leave you feeling refreshed and energetic. Many bathhouses also included libraries, gardens, and exercise areas. You might spend an hour or two reading scrolls of poetry or philosophy, or engaging in physical exercise to maintain your health and fitness. The baths were truly centers of Roman social life, places where business deals were made, friendships formed, and news exchanged. Rome homes and domestic life. Structure of a Roman home reflected the social status and wealth of its occupants. Wealthy Romans lived in spacious houses called domus, while the majority of urban dwellers resided in apartment buildings known as insulae. The domus of Gaius Flavius Maximus, a successful banker, exemplified the luxury of upper-class Roman domestic life. Visitors would enter through the vestibule, where a slave doorkeeper would announce their arrival. The central atrium, open to the sky through a rectangular opening called the compluvium, served as the heart of the home. Rainwater from the roof would collect in the impluvium, a shallow basin in the floor, providing both a practical water source and an aesthetic focal point. Around the atrium were arranged the various rooms of the house. The tablinum served as the master's office, where he would conduct business and meet with clients. The triclinium was the formal dining room, with 3 couches arranged around a central table for elaborate dinner parties. Private family quarters, including bedrooms and a kitchen, were located toward the back of the house, often surrounding a second courtyard called the peristyle. The walls throughout the house were decorated with elaborate frescoes in the fashionable Fourth Pompeian style, featuring architectural fantasies, mythological scenes, and delicate ornamental motifs. In the triclinium, a painting might depict the wedding of Venus and Mars, while in the master bedroom, pastoral scenes of shepherds and their flocks created a peaceful, bucolic atmosphere. In contrast, the insulae where most Romans lived were quite different. These multi-story apartment buildings could rise to 6 or 7 stories, with the most desirable apartments on the lower floors. Caius Lucius Mercator, a shopkeeper, lived with his family in a modest 2-room apartment on the 3rd floor of an insula near the Forum Boarium. The cattle market. Their apartment consisted of a main room where the family cooked, ate, and spent their waking hours, and a smaller back room where they slept. The walls were plain whitewash plaster, decorated only with a few simple paintings and the family's lararium. Cooking was done over a small brazier, as most insulae did not have kitchens, and water had to be carried up from a public fountain in the street below. Despite the modest conditions, Roman families took pride in their homes and worked to make them as comfortable as possible. Simple furnishings, wooden stools, storage chests, and sleeping couches were arranged to make the most of the available space. Oil lamps provided light in the evening, and small braziers offered warmth during the cooler months. The working life of Romans. The economy of Rome depended on a diverse array of occupations, from skilled craftsmen to merchants to government officials. Each played a crucial role in maintaining the prosperity and functioning of the empire. Marcus Cornelius Faber, a master carpenter, began his day before dawn in his workshop near the Campus Martis. His slaves and apprentices would already be at work, preparing wood, sharpening tools, and organizing materials for the day's projects. Marcus specialized in creating furniture for wealthy homes, ornate tables with ivory inlays, chairs with silver fittings, and storage chests decorated with carved reliefs. His workshop was filled with the pleasant smell of wood, shavings, and the sounds of saws, hammers, and planes. Romans appreciated fine craftsmanship, and Marcus had built his reputation over many years of producing beautiful and functional pieces. His work required not only technical skill, but also artistic vision, as his clients expected their furniture to reflect their wealth and sophisticated taste. In another part of the city, Gaius Mercator Antalis operated a shop specializing in luxury goods from the eastern provinces. His stall in the Forum Romanum displayed silk fabrics from China, precious stones from India, spices from Arabia, and pearls from the Red Sea. Romans had developed a taste for exotic luxuries, and merchants like Gaius played a vital role in satisfying this demand. Each morning, Gaius would carefully arrange his merchandise, displaying the finest pieces where they would catch the light and attract customers. His knowledge of foreign markets and his ability to judge the quality of exotic goods had made him prosperous, allowing him to purchase a small domus and even invest in trading ventures to distant provinces. Military life and service. The Roman military was the backbone of the empire's power and expansion. Professional soldiers, organized into legions, were disciplined, well-trained, and equipped with the finest weapons and armor that Roman technology could provide. Centurion Marcus Valerius Corvus had served in the legions for over 15 years, rising through the ranks from a common soldier to command a century of 80 men. His legion, the 10th Fretensis, was stationed on the frontier in Germania, where they maintained the empire's northern border against barbarian incursions. Life in the legion was highly regimented. Each day began before dawn with inspection and morning exercises. Soldiers would practice sword work, shield maneuvers, and formation fighting. They would march long distances in full armor to maintain their fitness and discipline. In addition to their military duties, legionaries were also expected to work on construction projects, building roads, bridges, and fortifications that extended Roman civilization into newly conquered territories. Marcus took pride in his men and in the traditions of the legion. Each soldier was equipped with a gladius, a short stabbing sword perfectly balanced for close combat, a pilum, a javelin designed to penetrate enemy shields, and a large rectangular shield called a scutum. Their armor consisted of lorica segmentata, overlapping metal plates that provided excellent protection while allowing freedom of movement. The legion was not just a military unit but a community. Soldiers formed close bonds with their tentmates, sharing the hardships and dangers of frontier life. They celebrated religious festivals together, honoring both the traditional Roman gods and the standards of their legion. Veterans who survived their 25 years of service would receive grants of land and Roman citizenship, allowing them to retire in comfort and security. Trade and commerce. Rome's position at the center of the Mediterranean world made it a natural hub for trade and commerce. Merchants from all corners of the empire brought their goods to Roman markets, creating a cosmopolitan atmosphere of prosperity and cultural exchange. The harbor of Portus, Rome's primary port facility, was a marvel of engineering and organization. Great ships from Egypt arrived laden with grain to feed the city's population. Vessels from Gaul brought wine and pottery, while ships from Britain carried tin and woolen goods. From the eastern provinces came silk, spices, precious stones, and other luxury items that Romans had developed a taste for. Quintus Nauticus Mercator owned a fleet of ships that traded throughout the Mediterranean. His vessels were sturdy, reliable craft designed to carry maximum cargo while weathering the storms and dangers of sea travel. Each ship was equipped with a crew of experienced sailors who knew the winds, currents, and harbors of the inland sea. Trading was a risky but potentially profitable business. Pirates still operated in some areas despite Roman naval patrols, and storms could destroy ships and their valuable cargoes. However, successful merchants like Quintus could accumulate considerable wealth, allowing them to purchase property, invest in other ventures, and even gain entry to the equestrian class. The markets of Rome were filled with goods from throughout the empire. In the Forum Boarium, the cattle market, farmers from the countryside brought livestock for sale to urban butchers and consumers. The Forum Holitorium specialized in vegetables and fruits, while the Vicus Tuscus was known for luxury goods and imported items. Arts and literature. The cultural life of Rome during its peak was rich and varied, with patronage from the emperor and wealthy citizens supporting a flourishing community of artists, writers, and performers. Gaius Poeta Maximus was one of Rome's most celebrated writers, famous for his epic poem about the founding of the city. Like many Roman authors, he drew inspiration from Greek models while creating works that celebrated Roman values and achievements. His poetry was recited at public festivals and private gatherings, and copies of his works were eagerly sought by educated Romans throughout the empire. Roman literature encompassed many genres: epic poetry, lyric verse, satirical works, historical writings, and philosophical treatises. Authors like Titus Lucretius Carus wrote about natural philosophy, while others like Gaius Valerius Catullus composed intimate personal poems about love and friendship. The visual arts also flourished during this period. Roman sculptors created realistic portraits that captured not just the physical appearance, but also the character and personality of their subjects. Roman paintings, preserved in cities like Pompeii and Herculaneum, show scenes of daily life, mythological subjects, and architectural fantasies that demonstrate sophisticated artistic techniques. Lucius Pictor Magnificus operated a workshop that created frescoes for wealthy Roman homes. His artists were skilled in the complex techniques needed to create paintings that would last for generations. They prepared walls with multiple layers of plaster, mixed pigments from imported materials, and created works that ranged from simple decorative patterns to complex narrative scenes. Religious ceremonies and festivals. The religious life of Rome was marked by a calendar filled with festivals, ceremonies, and observances that brought the community together and honored the gods who protected the city and empire. The festival of Saturnalia, held in December, was one of the most popular celebrations of the Roman year. During this time, normal social conventions were temporarily suspended. Slaves could speak freely to their masters. Gifts were exchanged, and the city took on a carnival-like atmosphere of celebration and revelry. Pontifex Maximus Gaius Caecilius Pius oversaw many of the city's most important religious ceremonies. As high priest, he was responsible for maintaining the proper relationship between Rome and its gods. He supervised the Vestal Virgins, who tended the sacred flame of Vesta that symbolized the continuity of Roman civilization. He performed sacrifices on behalf of the state and interpreted omens and signs that might guide Roman policy. Roman religion was practical and contractual in nature. Citizens made offerings and performed rituals with the expectation that the gods would respond with protection, prosperity, and success. Public ceremonies were elaborate affairs that reinforced social hierarchy and community bonds while honoring the divine forces that governed human affairs. The rhythm of the Roman day. As the sun set over the 7 hills of Rome, the city gradually settled into its evening rhythm. Oil lamps and torches began to flicker the life in windows and doorways, casting a warm, golden glow over the ancient streets. The sounds of the day, the hammering of craftsmen, the calls of vendors, the rumble of carts on cobblestones, gave way to the gentler sounds of evening, the murmur of conversation from taverns, the distant music of a dinner party, the soft splash of fountains in moonlit courtyards. Families gathered for their evening meal, the most important social occasion of the Roman day. In wealthy households, this might be an elaborate affair with multiple courses and entertainment. In modest homes, it was a simpler, but no less important time for family members to come together, share the events of the day, and strengthen the bonds that held the Roman household together. As night deepened, the city gradually grew quieter. Slaves would douse the lamps and bank the fires. Guards would take their positions at important buildings and wealthy homes. The night watch would begin their patrols, ensuring the safety and security of the sleeping city. In the distance, barely audible over the gentle sounds of the Roman night, one could hear the soft chanting of the Vestal Virgins maintaining their eternal vigil over the sacred flame, and the measured tread of sentries on the walls of the Praetorian camp. Rome never truly slept, but as the hours passed toward dawn, the great city settled into the peaceful rhythm that had sustained it for centuries, and would continue to do so for centuries more. The legacy of Roman civilization as civilization. We close our eyes and drift into peaceful slumber. We carry with us the echoes of this ancient world. The Roman Empire at its peak was a testament to human achievement, a civilization that created magnificent works of art and architecture, developed sophisticated systems of law and government, and built a vast network of cities, roads, and institutions that connected diverse peoples across 3 continents. The Romans were builders and organizers, soldiers and poets, farmers and philosophers. They created a way of life that valued both practical achievement and cultural refinement, both individual ambition and civic responsibility. Their legacy lives on in our languages, our laws, our architecture, and our ideals of citizenship and public service. Let the gentle rhythm of Roman life lull you toward sleep. The soft footfalls of citizens walking home through lamplit streets, the distant sound of water flowing through ancient aqueducts, the whisper of evening breezes through the columns of magnificent temples, and the eternal pulse of a civilization that continues to inspire and instruct us across the centuries. Sleep now, and dream of marble columns gleaming in the Mediterranean sun, of gardens where philosophers discuss the nature of the good life, of workshops where skilled craftsmen created objects of lasting beauty, and of the eternal city that stood at the heart of the ancient world, a testament to the enduring power of human imagination, ambition, and achievement. The seasons of Roman life as we continue our gentle journey through the Roman Empire. Let us observe how the changing seasons affected the rhythm of daily life. Spring brought renewal and hope to the ancient world. The hills around Rome would bloom with wildflowers, crimson poppies, golden broom, and delicate white narcissus. Farmers like Lucius Agricola Maximus would prepare their fields for planting, following the agricultural wisdom passed down through generations. The Roman calendar was closely tied to agricultural cycles. The festival of Robigalia in April honored the god who protected crops from disease, while the Floralia celebrated the goddess of flowers with colorful processions through the city streets. Children would weave garlands of spring blossoms, and even the most serious senators would smile at the sight of cherry trees blooming in their gardens. Summer brought long, warm days perfect for outdoor activities. The wealthy would often retreat to their villas in the countryside, escaping the heat and crowds of the city. Villa Hadriana, owned by the prosperous merchant Gaius Hadrianus Fortunatus, was situated in the cool hills outside Rome. Surrounded by vineyards and olive groves, the villa's gardens were designed for both beauty and practicality. Geometric patterns of boxwood hedges enclosed beds of roses, lavender, and herbs used for cooking and medicine. Grapevines trained on wooden trellises provided shade for outdoor dining areas, while fruit trees, figs, pears, and pomegranates offered sweet treats for the family and their guests. Autumn was harvest time, a period of intense activity and celebration. The grape harvest, or vendemmia, was a community affair that brought together landowners, tenant farmers, and seasonal workers. Marcus Vinicius Rusticus owned extensive vineyards in the countryside south of Rome, where he produced wine that was shipped throughout the empire. The harvest began before dawn, when the air was cool and the grapes were at their freshest. Workers would move through the rows with sharp knives, carefully cutting clusters of ripe grapes and placing them in wicker baskets. The work was hard but festive, accompanied by singing and storytelling that helped pass the long hours. Winter brought a quieter pace to Roman life. While the Mediterranean climate was mild compared to northern regions, Romans still needed to prepare for cooler weather. Homes were heated by braziers burning charcoal or wood, and wealthy families had hypocaust systems that circulated warm air beneath their floors. This was the season for indoor activities, reading, writing, crafting, and planning for the coming year. Scholars like Gaius Plinius Secundus would spend winter evenings writing letters to friends throughout the empire, sharing news, philosophical observations, and literary works. These letters, copied by scribes and carried by messengers, helped maintain the cultural connections that bound the empire together. The arts of leisure Roman society placed great value on leisure time, which they called otium. This was not mere idleness, but time devoted to cultural pursuits, self-improvement, and social relationships. The concept of otium reflected the Roman belief that a well-lived life required balance between work and contemplation, between public duty and private fulfillment. In the gardens of his suburban villa, Marcus Tullius Philolaus would spend hours in quiet contemplation, walking among carefully tended paths lined with cypress trees and marble statues. These gardens were designed as outdoor rooms, with different areas serving different purposes: a sunny terrace for morning reading, a shaded grove, afternoon rest, a fountain courtyard for evening conversation. Roman gardens were marvels of landscape architecture, combining practical and aesthetic elements. They might include herb gardens for the kitchen, vegetable plots for fresh produce, orchards for fruit, and ornamental areas with flowers, topiary, and water features. The sound of running water from fountains and streams was considered essential for creating a peaceful atmosphere. The art of conversation was highly valued in Roman society. Educated Romans prided themselves on their ability to discuss literature, philosophy, politics, and current events with wit and intelligence. Dinner parties were opportunities to display this skill, with hosts carefully choosing their guest lists to ensure lively and engaging discussions. Gaius Hospes Elegans was famous throughout Rome for the quality of his dinner parties. His dining room could accommodate 9 guests reclining on 3 couches arranged around a central table. The evening would begin with aperitifs and light conversation, progress through multiple courses accompanied by readings from favorite poets, and conclude with philosophical discussions that might continue well into the night. Crafts and artisans. Roman Empire was renowned for the skill of its craftsmen and the beauty of their creations. In workshops throughout the city, artisans created objects that combined function with artistic excellence, reflecting the Roman appreciation for quality and beauty in everyday life. Marcus Figulus Ceramicus operated a pottery workshop in the Subura district, where he and his apprentices created both utilitarian vessels and decorative pieces. Roman pottery was admired throughout the ancient world for its technical excellence and artistic sophistication. His workshop produced everything from simple cooking pots to elaborate serving dishes decorated with intricate patterns and scenes from mythology. The process of creating fine pottery required great skill and patience. Clay had to be carefully prepared, shaped on the potter's wheel with precise movements, dried slowly to prevent cracking, decorated with slips and glazes, and fired in kilns heated to exactly the right temperature. A master potter like Marcus had spent years learning these techniques, and his reputation drew customers from throughout the city. In another part of Rome, Lucius Aurifex Magister ran a goldsmith's workshop that created jewelry and decorative objects for wealthy clients. Roman jewelry was noted for its sophisticated designs and technical excellence. His artisans could create delicate filigree work, set precious stones with perfect precision, and craft pieces that would last for generations. The jewelry worn by Roman women and men was not merely ornamental, but also served as displays of wealth, status, and personal taste. A wealthy matron like Claudia Aurelia Nobilis might own necklaces of gold and pearls, earrings set with emeralds from Egypt, bracelets decorated with cameos, and rings bearing the seals used to authenticate documents dot the world of Roman women, particularly those of the upper classes, enjoyed more freedom and legal rights than their counterparts in most other ancient societies. While they could not vote or hold public office, they could own property, engage in business, and exercise considerable influence within their families and social circles. Livia Julia, businesswoman, was a successful merchant who inherited her husband's trading company and expanded it throughout the eastern Mediterranean. She owned ships that carried luxury goods from Asia to Rome, and warehouses where these goods were stored before being sold to eager Roman customers. Her typical day began early, as she reviewed accounts with her steward and planned the day's activities. She might visit the docks to inspect newly arrived cargo, meet with other merchants to negotiate contracts, or correspond with trading partners in distant cities. Roman women of her class were expected to be accomplished in mathematics, literature, and languages, skills essential for managing complex business operations. Roman mothers took an active role in their children's education and moral development. Cornelia Mater Exemplaris was famous throughout Rome for the excellence of her sons, who would become distinguished senators and generals. She had personally supervised their early education, choosing the best tutors and ensuring they developed both intellectual abilities and strong moral character. The education of daughters was also considered important, though it differed somewhat from that of sons. Girls learned reading, writing, mathematics, music, and domestic management. They studied poetry and philosophy, though with less emphasis on rhetoric and public speaking than their brothers. The goal was to prepare them to be cultured companions to their husbands and wise mothers to their children. Music and performance music played an important role in Roman life, accompanying religious ceremonies, public festivals, private celebrations, and daily activities. Roman musicians used a variety of instruments, many adapted from Greek and Eastern traditions, but modified to suit Roman tastes and preferences. Gaius Musicus Harmonicus was a renowned lyre player who performed at the most fashionable dinner parties in Rome. His instrument, crafted from rare woods and decorated with ivory inlays, produced sweet, melodious tones that could accompany poetry readings or provide background music for conversation. Roman music was closely connected to poetry, with many poems intended to be sung rather than simply recited. The rhythm and meter of Latin verse were designed to complement musical accompaniment, creating artistic works that appealed to both the ear and the intellect. The theater was another important venue for musical performance. Roman comedies and tragedies included songs, dances, and instrumental interludes that enhanced the dramatic effect of the productions. Actors were expected to be skilled singers as well as performers, and the most successful could achieve considerable fame and fortune. Marcus Histrio Salubris was one of Rome's most popular comic actors, known for his ability to portray a wide range of characters with humor and insight. His performances drew audiences from all levels of society, from slaves who saved their pennies to attend the theater to senators who applauded from their reserved seats. The rhythm of the Roman year. The Bay Roman calendar was filled with festivals, ceremonies, and observances that marked the passage of time and brought the community together in shared celebration and worship. These occasions provided rhythm and meaning to daily life, connecting individual Romans to their city, their gods, and their fellow citizens. The new year began in March with festivals dedicated to Mars, the god of war and agriculture. This was traditionally the beginning of both the military campaign season and the agricultural year. Citizens would participate in purification rituals and make offerings for the prosperity and protection of the city. The festival of Megalensia in April honored the great mother goddess with processions, theatrical performances, and elaborate banquets. The streets would be decorated with flowers and banners, and the entire city would take on a festive atmosphere as citizens participated in the celebrations. Summer brought the festival of Neptunalia, honoring the god of the sea with ceremonies that were particularly popular among merchants and sailors whose livelihoods depended on maritime trade. Autumn was marked by harvest festivals that celebrated the abundance of the earth and gave thanks for successful crops. The evening hours. As twilight settled over the 7 hills of Rome, the city would gradually transition from the business of day to the pleasures of evening. This was the time for social gatherings, cultural activities, and family life, the hours when Romans could relax and enjoy the fruits of their labor. In the house of Senator Gaius Convivialis Hospitalis, preparations would begin in the late afternoon for an evening dinner party. Slaves would arrange the triclinium with fresh flowers and light oil lamps, while the kitchen staff prepared elaborate dishes designed to impress the senator's distinguished guests. The guests would arrive as the sun set, wearing their finest togas and most elegant jewelry. They would be greeted with warm wine flavored with honey and spices, and the evening would begin with pleasant conversation about current events, literature, and philosophy. As the meal progressed through its various courses, appetizers, main dishes, and desserts, the conversation would become more animated and wide-ranging. Poets might recite their latest works, philosophers might debate the nature of the good life, and politicians might share insights about the affairs of state. Meanwhile, in the more modest homes of ordinary Romans, families would gather for their own evening meals. Though simpler than the elaborate banquets of the wealthy, these meals were no less important for family bonding and the transmission of values from parents to children. Gaius Plautus Laborius, a hard-working craftsman, would return home each evening to find his wife and children waiting for him. They would share a simple but nourishing meal of bread, cheese, vegetables, and perhaps a small amount of meat or fish. The children would tell their parents about their day, and the parents would share stories and lessons that would help guide their children's development. The night watch. As the evening hours passed and most Romans settled into sleep, the city did not become completely quiet. Night watchmen patrolled the streets, keeping order and watching for fires, a constant danger in a city where many buildings were constructed of wood and lit by oil lamps and candles. Marcus Vigil Nocturnalis was a member of the night watch, responsible for patrolling several blocks in the heart of the city. He and his fellow watchmen carried lanterns and staffs, and they knew every street, alley, and building in their district. Their presence provided security and peace of mind for sleeping citizens. The night hours also belonged to certain religious observances. The Vestal Virgins maintained their sacred vigil over the eternal flame that symbolized the continuity of Roman civilization. Their temple never slept, and the soft glow of the sacred fire provided a spiritual center for the sleeping city. In private homes throughout Rome, the lararium, the household shrine, might be illuminated by a small oil lamp throughout the night, maintaining the family's connection to their protective gods even during the hours of sleep. Dreams of eternal Rome. As the night deepened and the great city settled into peaceful rest, Romans would drift into sleep, carrying with them the satisfaction of another day lived in the greatest civilization the world had ever known. Their dreams might be filled with images of marble temples gleaming in the Mediterranean sun, of gardens where philosophers walked in contemplation, of theaters where the greatest stories of human experience were brought to life. They might dream of distant provinces where wrong legions maintained the peace that allowed trade to flourish and diverse peoples to live together in harmony. They might envision the roads that connected every corner of the empire, carrying not just merchants and soldiers, but ideas and innovations that enriched the entire Roman world. In their sleep, they might hear the gentle splash of fountains in moonlit courtyards, the distant sound of the sea, carrying ships laden with goods from every corner of the known world, the soft whisper of wind through olive groves and vineyards that had fed and sustained their ancestors for generations. The Roman Empire at its peak was More than a political entity, it was a way of life that valued both practical achievement and cultural refinement, both individual ambition and collective responsibility. It was a civilization that created beauty and order, that celebrated human potential while acknowledging human limitations. As we conclude our journey through this remarkable period of history, let the gentle rhythms of Roman life carry you toward peaceful sleep. Rest in the knowledge that human beings can create civilizations of extraordinary beauty and achievement, that the dreams and aspirations of ordinary people can combine to build something magnificent and enduring. Sleep now, and let your dreams be filled with the eternal city that stood at the heart of the ancient world, a testament to the enduring power of human creativity, determination, and hope. Tomorrow, when you wake, carry with you the inspiration of Rome at its greatest. And remember that every day offers new opportunities to build, to create, and to contribute to the ongoing story of human civilization. Rest well, traveler through time. In your dreams, the Roman sun will continue to shine on marble columns and peaceful gardens, on busy streets and quiet temples, on the eternal city that remains forever young in the memory of the world.